Yep.
Okay. Okay. Hello, 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 and welcome back to Tea.Coffee.Water. I am your host, Natalie Poindexter, and this water series, I know we just launched. I'm just excited. We have Liyanne back with us again, and thank you so much for being here. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes,
Okay, I was
thank you
like,
for having me.
yeah.
Sorry, I got distracted.
I feel like today, and I was telling Liyanne before we started recording, like it's going to be really interesting session today, episode, because I have been, I guess, being a master of many tasks today, on fumes of sleep. But one thing I did have, I had my little Liyanne voice in the back of my head all day today, and I've been like guzzling water. And so yeah, I was like, oh, this is going to be hilarious because who knows what kind of energy we're going to have happening today. And I think every single session is going to be unique within its own. And we are talking tapping into your superpowers. My initial, and it's so funny because I feel like the longer we spend getting to know each other, the more things organically pop up, right? Last week we talked about like, shoes, hair, clothes, the more materialistic aspects of life, and then come to find out that like it was way deeper than that by just one singular comment of our relationships with our mothers, right? And like what that turned into and how like what that really has done and affected within our lives. And I really think like having that conversation around tapping into your superpowers, my initial, and I would love to hear what you think of this, like reawakening, I'm going to call it. I was in Columbus sitting with this powerfully amazing human named Daisha, and we were supposed to have like, I don't know, a 10-minute conversation. And it turned into a 3-hour conversation. And I don't even want to say it was a conversation because I wasn't doing a whole lot of talking, but there was emoting that was happening on an existential level. And it was truly her like tapping into my superpowers and being like, why have you dampened them down? And one of the things she always tells me, and whenever we have these conversations, I'm like, I don't know, it's a little too big. She always says to me, when are you going to shut up and shift? When are you, and I know we're going to talk about this next week, but be comfortable and stop being scared of like the next best version of your authentic self. And I think a part of that transformation is tapping in to your superpowers. And so I'm just curious, like, did you have a pivotal moment in your world where you were like, yep, I'm a little bit different than the other kids in the sandbox? And like, you knew, right? Like you knew, like, yeah, I've got this gift, or I've got this thing, I've got this experience that I've had in my world that's told me like, yep, I've got superpowers.
So you want me to answer that question?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I guess the first one that I was aware of is I have a very individual sense of style.
Mm.
And it is something that has been picked up by people all through my life. And it is and I would say that that is a form of superpower, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So because I do it, I thought that maybe it was quite a shallow thing,
Mm.
but it's not, because what you choose to project on the outside is actually you expressing what's on the inside,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
I would say yes. That was like the first notion that I knew I was a bit different to the other, kids in the sandbox, because I had my very own sense of style. Not really when I was a kid, because, my dad would choose the stuff for me and my sister. However, he knew that he best not buy us the same things,
Oh.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's only 13 months between us, right?
Oh,
Between me and my sister.
Irish twins.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So, a lot of people would say, "Oh, are they twins?" And you go, "No, they're not." So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but he knew, do not buy the same stuff
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't going to be having it, and I don't think my sister was going to be having it too. To be fair, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would say that's the first time it's like a very individual sense of style, and that
Mm-hmm.
really is an expression of what's inside, very individual. And my mum said because I did have a relationship with my mum
Mm-hmm.
later in life, so she told me that when I was born, I came out with my hand up, and I wouldn't put it down to the point where they thought they were worried that maybe I could be, deformed in some way. But
Mm-hmm.
no, I was just being my, independent self.
Yes.
But
I want
difficult.
it here and I'm going to keep it here. I love it. I think that's I think that's fantastic.
Right.
It is.
How about you? How about you?
Oh, I did share this with you briefly. And even as a kid, I was an eclectic child. Um, we talked about, hair as a part of our identity and
Mm.
how, people are like, oh yeah, the one with the hair, right? Like you don't have to say anything else and you just knew. And I remember my siblings and my family would tell these stories. My mother would spend time, I don't know how much time, I would say probably too much time because she knew I was going to do this, braiding my hair to tame it. And it was super cute. I had these little barrettes that were like animal shapes and stylish and like little, yeah, it was a whole thing. And then I would like do right. I had this cute little outfit that had been picked out for me, and I would like strip, take all of my hair back out, and put on a swimsuit and patent leather shoes. And apparently I put these same patent leather shoes on that were, listen, patent leather will never
Mm.
die. These patent leather shoes that were like too small after a while, but I just refused to stop wearing them. Which is very interesting that I spent like 15 years in aquatics then. But yeah, and I think the other piece too, when I was at South by this year, I had this blazer on. And I think this was the moment when I was just like, I actually get it now. I think I really get it. Post panel session, and I'm in a daze from the experience that I just had, right? Like I felt famous. I really did. I really felt famous, right? Like I was doing interviews afterwards and people were running up to me and talking to me, and it was a whole situation. And I had this Nigerian print blazer on, and people were actually trying to like take the jacket off my body. Like it was crazy. They were like, this
Wow.
is very beautiful. Like, like they were just in, I don't know what it was. It was like drawing people's little hands towards
Mm.
me constantly. It was very strange. But I did learn, and I feel like this goes into our superpowers conversation as well. I met this fantastic woman who is an artist, and she had done this beautiful display. And she was like, I don't know you, but come talk to me. Like, come over here and we're going to have a conversation. And it was just like this immediate draw to her. And I had my massive Amazonite chest plate on. I had Antiope on. And so she says, that's beautiful. And I was like, oh, thank you. Please don't touch it. Because I had to start like leaning away from people. Like that was the type of like reaching feeling I was getting. And she was like, oh no, be careful because those are psychic vampires.
Right. Yeah.
and they're trying to take a piece of you.
Mm.
And I thought that was so interesting because she even said, like, everything, the energy that is being projected from you. And I think this relates back to our style, our just unique identity, right? Of who we are. Like, we don't put on certain things to get the attention. It's just like, I want to wear that today.
Yeah.
Someone put
Just
that
wear it.
on, you know,
Yeah.
and you're just like doing your thing, and people are like, oh my gosh, that, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, thank you. You know, I just threw this thing on, right? Like, you know, and that's the mindset. And
Mm.
you know, she said, you know, the energy that you're giving off, like, just go be by yourself, because
Right.
it's so powerful. People are
Mm.
going to try to keep taking it.
Mm. Mm.
And I
Mm.
just felt like that was just such um you know, an interesting feeling, because, right, like, we're talking tapping into your superpowers and um what that means, right? And like, you, so like, yes, like, you're what you portray, whether it's via earrings, necklaces, right? It doesn't, whatever it is, even your hair, which is just like this natural thing, right? Growing out of your scalp.
I mean, literally, just so not the weekend just gone, but the weekend before that, I went to a party with my sister
Mm,
and had my hair out. So
mm,
anyone that's watching this, they're probably thinking, what are they talking about? Their hair doesn't look that, um, uh, unusual.
mhm,
However, um, my hair when it's out is big
mhm,
and curly, and
mhm,
so is Natalie's, right?
mhm,
Or at the moment it's dreaded, but
mhm,
yeah, it's a thing.
mhm.
And at this party, it's like, oh my God, your hair. And then the hands come, can I touch it?
Oh my gosh.
And it depends on who it is asking and the kind of intent that's coming at me. And sometimes
Mm,
I'll say, yeah, no problem. It's
really?
usually no problem.
Mhm,
But something I'm going, oh no, no.
mhm,
It's
mhm.
like, because yeah, it's like you're right. People are like drawn. And as I said to you the other day, you know, more than once in my life, I've been stopped in the street by complete strangers, in London, even people running to tap me on the shoulder traveling on the tube where,
Yeah.
everyone's going a million miles an hour trying to get to their platforms and stuff, you know, run to stop me and say, excuse me, I just wanted to tell you, you look amazing, you know?
Mhm,
And that stuff is like, oh,
mhm.
it's so great that, for no other reason than to say, hey, I appreciate, you know, your
Yeah,
look.
yeah.
And then they're off to go get their train or whatever,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
But it's
mhm.
just that moment of connection and giving you a gift of appreciation. And
Yeah.
it's so wonderful, right? And that is a power in of itself, right? The
Mhm,
power of connection,
mhm.
that they've felt, oh, I just want to go tell her that I love what she's
Yes.
wearing.
You know, it's so funny you say that. I mean, it's not funny. It's ha ha funny, right? But it's just like appropriately organic. I was on my way to dinner with an associate, and we were stopping in the mall for some reason, which that's still a thing for some people, I guess. We went into a store. How about that? And this woman stopped us, and she was like, "You look fantastic." And I
Hmm.
was like, oh my gosh, thank you. You know, like, no shame on him or shade towards him, but like, he didn't tell me I looked fantastic. But that's not the point. The point of this story is and then it happened again, like another random woman. And he said to me afterwards, I don't know that I've seen other women celebrate women. It's
They do.
weird.
They do. They do, because the people I'm talking about that stop me, I would say percentage wise, and you can tell me your experience, I would say percentage wise, it would be 80% women and
Mhm.
20% men.
Same. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 1,000% yes.
Yeah.
And you know, especially like before I locked my hair, um it was a situation, like, and I will never forget, I was like in Columbus, Ohio, driving on the highway, and like someone had pulled up next to my car, like honking the horn. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? And it was a friend of mine. It was an actual friend of mine that I'd known for years. And I was like, dude, how did you sped past me? How did you even know it was me? And he was like, girl, your hair. This is nighttime, right? But like, just like that piece. And I know we've talked about this, and I think it's like such an interesting and also very risque in a way, right? Because it's not a topic that we typically talk about within minority communities, but like of that ethnic celebration. Yeah. And you shared with me, you know, when you were in the UK, right? It was just like people were like, let me see who she is. You know, let me talk to her. And I'm just like, I've always been interested of what that experience is like, because I've started to travel more now internationally, and it's mostly in the Caribbean, so there's usually this confusion of what I am immediately. Like
whether you're local.
Yes, if I'm local, and like I'm in the Dominican and I understand Spanish well enough to like answer in English, but my Spanish is not, they get too excited when you speak Spanish back. Like I love my Dominicans. It's too fast. I don't even know if you're saying words anymore, right? So anyways, but they're like, no, you're Dominican. And I'm like, no, I'm Black. Like, I'm not, right? And like, there's this whole, even conversation almost, right? Of like convincing the person I'm talking to
that
I'm not a local.
I've had okay, we haven't actually had this conversation. This is really interesting.
Okay.
So I guess one of our superpowers is also being able to be local in a place where we're not local, right? So in London, I mean, a very, very multicultural city, right?
Yeah.
So I would get mistaken for Brazilian was very common
Okay.
by Brazilians. So we were, you know, me and my partner were at a club where we were watching the World Cup, you know, football
Yeah.
World Cup, and it was a Brazil game, and it's a club called Guanabara, and they had, you know, Guanabara, and they had the game playing, and you know, it was a party because you know Brazilian sport is like is an opportunity to party, right? So we're there, me and my other half, and you know, we're like dancing away and watching the football, and this woman comes up to me and she goes, because I had my hair out, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Here comes the hair again, yeah.
Yep.
Had my hair out, and she goes, "You Brazil?" I said, "No." And she goes, "But you look Brazil." I said, "Yeah, I know. I've been told that before." And she goes, "No, but you don't understand. You look more Brazil than me, and I'm
Yeah.
Brazil."
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right. So there's Brazilian, Espanol, you know, Spanish, um, North African, you know,
Oh,
so
okay.
you know, Arabic, yeah.
Yes.
So you know, when I
Yes.
went to
Egyptian.
Morocco, they were
Ah,
convinced I was
Moroccan.
a local, you know, as
Mhm.
in they were looking at me really sternly and pulled me aside just as I came out, you know, the entry gate to the airport, and the airport security stopped me and said,
Mm.
"Can we have a look at your passport?" Like very stern. Then when they opened my passport, right, their
Mhm.
faces just completely changed because I travel on a New Zealand passport. I've never traveled on a British passport, even though I could get one. So they open my passport and they go, "Oh, you're not from here?" I said, "No, I'm from New Zealand." They said, "Oh, All Blacks." I said, "Yes." Rugby, right?
Yes. Oh my.
But their whole demeanor changed, right? Because I think they were ready to tell me off. "Why aren't you covered up?" Right?
Yep.
Because I
Yep.
look local, right?
Yep.
"Why aren't you covered up? Why haven't you
Mhm.
got?" Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
your hijab. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. And just as like
Mm-hmm.
a random side note, so my brother played rugby,
Mm-hmm.
and the one thing I only always knew about New Zealand was All Blacks. Like
Right.
that was the right, like that was the only
Yeah.
thing I always knew, right? We and my brother was like, no, like they're just like this, I don't even know the word to explain the awe he had of the rugby team. But
Mm.
if you're, for everyone listening, if you've never even, if you don't even know what we're talking about, just Google real quick, like All Blacks. And I feel like this is just like flew again, like appropriately organic flowing into this. You have to search All Blacks Haka, and it's Haka, and we'll definitely put a link in the show notes. But if you have never seen a Haka performed, be prepared. Like it will take your breath away. There is a feeling that comes from it. And I didn't even know what it was because my actual Hawaiian friends had sent me the Haka video. And I didn't know, right? I mean, like I knew, but I don't know kind of a thing that I was like, well, why are these like New Zealanders doing a Haka when like I thought these were Hawaiians, right? Like, right. And so just like that. So I obviously we have the New Zealand resident guru, obviously, right? When I was trying to explain this to you, I was telling you, I was like, yes, I saw it at a wedding and the man performed it with all of the men. And it was a thing. It was like a whole ceremony and it was extremely powerful. And there was a situation happening and you were like, a haka. And I was like, no, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's something else. And you're like, no, I'm pretty positive I know what you're talking about, Natalie. And I was like, well, how would you know, Liyanne? And you're like, because it's part of exactly what I've been born, raised, live, culturally know.
And now I'm going to big up for the wahine, which is the females, and the black ferns. So the black ferns are the female rugby team of New Zealand, and they are twice as successful as the heralded All Blacks. And
Mm-hmm.
they don't get the same amount of funding. In fact, they get far, 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 far less funding, and
Mm,
they're twice as successful. So
mm,
once you've gone and looked at the All Blacks haka, please go and check out the Black Ferns haka.
mm-hmm. That was my education lesson too.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize, obviously my brother doesn't play rugby anymore, but I was a women's volleyball player. And so you always think about women's volleyball, but you don't think about men's volleyball, but they are like brilliant athletes,
Mm-hmm.
brilliant athletes. And I mean, even just like, I know that's not even a part of our conversation today, but just of that reminder of like, despite being massively more successful
Yeah.
than the All Blacks, and no shade to them, right? It's just a
No.
fact of life, it's data, it's proven. It's still not an equitable conversation around like getting paid for value, for your worth, for your proven skill and expertise. And I know that's like going into our conversation we're going to have about being your authentic self and being a disruptor. But I think even more so, it's one of the reasons I went into consulting is
Right.
because like they absolutely need to get the same amount of funding, especially if not more. Right. And like, yeah, so I know that was just a total
Or even
sidetrack.
funding aside, recognition,
Mm,
because like everyone knows the All Blacks. No
mm,
one knows, well, internationally, hardly anyone has heard of the Black Ferns.
yeah.
And they are so impressive, so
Mm,
impressive.
mm,
So they have double the number of World Cup titles than the All Blacks have,
oh,
and the women's competition has been going far less, a shorter period of time. So they've managed to get twice as much in less time, because
mm,
the men's competition has been going a lot longer than the
mhm,
women.
mhm.
Yeah.
I saw this like quick clip from Shaquille O'Neal from Shaq, and it was just recently, and it was about the WNBA. And he said, I have an easy solution for them. An easy solution for them that will bring in more money and bring in more, notoriety.
Yeah.
Lower the rim. Lower the rim. Because he said, in women's volleyball, they lower the net. It's lower than in men's, and it is. It's a different height. And it's just as an impressively powerful sport. Right. And he's like, if you look, and he was on a podcast, and the gentleman said, the host said, oh, so they can dunk. And Shaq's like, yeah, that's the only thing that's missing from the WNBA. And the part that I feel like he was emphasizing is it's not equitable, because you're expecting women to play on the same height of a net of a hoop than as men. They're not the same height, right? Like that it's not the same.
Right.
They're not the same. And so you're telling them to like play up. You're telling them to like be a different gender, a human, a different skill set. And it was just eloquently stated, but like this quick reminder that like other sports have figured this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
Well, I mean, they don't
behind.
need to do anything like that for the Black Ferns, because
Yeah.
they've managed to smash it without having to alter anything,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
double the
Yeah.
success in less
Yeah.
time.
And so, okay, we've talked a little bit about the Haka, but can you explain what it is? What like,
Oh golly.
and it does, I mean, we can totally do a whole history lesson if you so choose. I just want to share to those who have yet to experience what they're in for.
Okay. So first of all, it's not my direct culture. So I am mixed race, as I said in our first episode, mixed race Samoan English. But I have grown up with, being surrounded by Maori culture, and I have been in a kapa haka group where they perform the haka as part of the performance. So I would say that I'm speaking on their behalf, but not with absolute authority. So I'm going to tell you what I know and what I know of my experience of haka. I can certainly, again, show notes, give, because I'm sure I've got some more, detailed, the actual, what's behind the haka from one of my friends, who actually takes haka into the corporate world, which we might talk about at another point, because I did that with him. So effectively, you have haka is used as a form of celebration. It can also be a form of challenge, right? So when rugby is being played, it's a form of challenge, and equally, it's a way of calling in the spirit, right? So you'll see the hand actions and, tapping the body. And that's all to do with being connected to your ancestors, being connected to the land that you're on, and that your body is one with both of those things, right? Because energy never dies. It never dies. It just changes form. So the haka is really a dance, and I'm doing, air quotes,
Yes.
dance,
Yes.
um, that that exemplifies the fact that we are not disconnected from nature. We are nature. And a lot of the hand actions, like I talked to you about the wiri, this is spirit moving through you when they wiri. Um, there's also, I only recently discovered that, when you're tapping the body, because Samoans have a similar dance, it's called a siva tau, and people may have heard The Rock talking about the siva tau.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also, we call it, it's like a slap dance, right?
Yes.
Slapping the body.
Yes.
And because we're like on water and it's about wellness, both of these cultural practices are actually hitting the meridian lines of the body,
Mm-hmm.
and they have their roots, they also have a wellness aspect to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, you are tapping your energy points
Yeah.
as part of this dance,
Mm.
right? So when it's done in rugby, it is like it's in a challenge context, but not in a mortal challenge, right? So not like anyone's going to get killed, but
Mm-hmm.
it's in a challenge context. And then when you have something to celebrate, people will do a haka as well, and
Mm-hmm.
that's like a haka in celebration
Yeah.
of whatever the achievement is, right? So
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
people will break into spontaneous haka here, there, and everywhere whenever there's, celebration happening.
Mm.
Have I covered enough for you to give the people a taster that you intended?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, yes. No,
Okay.
absolutely. And I think I just, it's so funny because of course all of our phones are listening to us, and I think we had been talking about the Haka, and there was just like other aspects, and spoiler alert, we are gonna throw a little extra piece into the end of this conversation for y'all to talk a little bit more about something Liyanne and I are cooking up. But The Rock was like doing some sort of gym exercise. I don't want to, lifting massive weights, and it was a Samoan song that he had on,
All
and
right.
so he's, and I don't know I'm not going to pretend like I can say the name, but he's like, sometimes you just have to break out into your cultural dance, basically, right? And so he's like doing this tapping and this
Oh,
shouting.
so he was doing the Sivatao. Okay.
Yes, yes,
Cool.
yes. And it
Cool.
was just like, he was like, you sometimes you just can't help it.
Yep.
And you just he just broke out into it for a quick moment. And then
Hmm.
that was it. And it was off on, off the screen or whatever. But, I have a friend of mine, and she talks about, doing tapping, and I think it's really interesting because throughout all of the water series, it's around accessing resources
Hmm.
that are holistic in supporting your wellness. And I don't want to just say health, right? Because it's just truly your
Yeah,
wellness, right?
that's
And
right.
so, like,
Yeah.
this dance, soft quotes, right, is so much more powerful than just an expression, right?
Yes.
Of whatever whatever it's needed for. And I know, like, I don't know, and I'm curious if there is some connection of when you're tapping into that, when you're performing this haka, what are you potentially unlocking and releasing within
Oh,
yourself?
yeah. Yeah. It's well, I can only give you my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So having performed haka, not just been a witness of it, and that's when I was back in my you know, stupid 20s, right? So I really, I felt it, but I didn't. It's only in this moment that I'm now really taking myself back there and feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
So when a haka is done with the intent that it's supposed to be done with,
Yeah.
um, because there are some early All Black hakas that are really cringeworthy, they're
Mm-hmm.
almost like a caricature of a haka.
And
But now, oh my gosh, it has changed completely, and it's how it fully is intended to be
mm-hmm.
performed, right? So being part of a haka and performing haka, you pretty much, you're channeling, you're
Mhm,
channeling
mhm,
energy.
mhm,
That's what you're doing.
mhm.
And when it's, like I said, when it's done with the intent that it's how it's intended to be done, that is what you're doing. And you feel, mm, I was going to say electrified, but you feel that energy running through you.
Yeah.
And then as the person witnessing it, if it's done, like I said, with the intent it's supposed to be done with, usually all the hairs on the back of your neck will stand up
Yeah.
because you're feeling that vibration of all the energy that's, being called up and down, like up from the earth and down from the heavens
Yes. Yes.
through the vessels that are the humans that are performing the haka.
Mm, mm. When the first video I ever saw, I didn't know what I was watching. My Hawaiian friend sent to me, and I almost started crying. Like it wasn't controlled. I wasn't emotional, right? I wasn't. I just, it was just happening,
Mhm.
and it was so it was a wedding. It was a celebration, right? And this now husband was performing it for his wife,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they even had this tiny tyke in there with them. He was this little fella,
Mhm. Yeah.
and he was doing
Mhm.
everything with them, right? And like
Yeah.
I don't know if that, and even just like rethinking about it, because I can visualize it to this day,
Mhm.
um kind of gets me all like,
Yeah.
there's tightness that's
Goosebumps.
happening, yeah, right, because I'm
Yeah.
just like, I could, and the other thing I've realized, and even on this journey of like exploration, whenever I watch them, I can't watch them once.
No, you got to watch it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
Yeah.
my breath is taken away. I'm almost like fixated
Mm,
in that experience that's
mm,
happening. And
mm.
and I really hope everyone that is listening, whether it's the Black Ferns, it's the All Blacks, no matter what, if it's Hawaiian versus Maori versus uh who else? I'm missing one.
Samoan.
Samoan, thank you. Uh it does, just look them up. And I really think it's such a powerful, even if you don't understand what's happening,
Yeah. Yeah.
um experience. And I feel like, again, like that unlocking and releasing, and we've talked about tapping into your superpowers. And I shared with you recently, like, I used to think I was a superhero.
Yeah. I love that when you told me that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, of course you are.
Used to have dreams that I was a superhero, right? And I feel like, just in general, right, of like tapping in, and when you're saying like tapping and you're releasing and you're engaging and you're connecting, and I was a kid when I thought I was a superhero, right? And I feel like most kids think they're superheroes, but I wasn't like running around with a cape on. I literally was dreaming that I was a superhero. But I was always told I wasn't. I was always told, it's just a dream. And I know we talk about this like later on in other conversations of what your dreams are truly telling you. And I'm not saying that we are a dream translation experts by any means, right? This is just like two people who are trying to navigate power, true,
Their
like,
internal waters. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm curious of, in your healing journey, incorporating things like the haka, or in general, just like tapping, how do you, because I feel like there's so much noise out there, right, of just like so many different experts. And because I think just your healing journey is just so powerfully amazing, when you are practicing different, I don't want to say rituals, but processes.
Modalities,
Thank you.
healing modalities. Yeah.
Yes. How do you choose which one to do based on what you need? Or maybe what you're not
Oh,
sure that you need?
so, how do I choose? Do you know what? I would say that they kind of got the, all the things I came. It's almost like you start with one, you go like looking, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
then you start with one thing, and then it leads you to another, and then another, and another. And the way I would select which ones I was going to try is, first of all, and again, it comes back to, you got to feel what's right for you, right?
yeah.
Because people will have tried. So I did yoga for a little while, well, for a long while actually. I did a whole period where I was doing a lot of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Then qigong, I still do qigong.
Okay.
Um,
For everyone that
and
doesn't know, what is that?
Oh, okay. So it's a bit like Tai Chi. It's a very gentle martial art that is all about flowing. It's like a
Mm-hmm,
flow. Um, and I would highly recommend it for people that don't feel like they're up to yoga, because
mm-hmm,
yoga can be quite demanding.
mm-hmm.
Qigong is a lot more gentle,
Okay.
and yeah. So how do I choose? And I guess the answer is, like, the way I would choose is, it's like, well, does that feel like something that I would enjoy, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm,
when you're looking at this stuff, if it's something that you enjoy doing, you'll keep up the practice,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, for example, Epsom salt baths are really, really good for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they give you a hit of magnesium. I
Uh-huh.
don't know about you, but I love taking baths. So that
Yes.
healing modality is like a no-brainer for me. It's like, chuck some, Epsom salts in my bath, no problem.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I can tick that on my list of, yep, that's another thing I've done to nourish myself today,
Mm. Mm.
along with my water,
Yes.
drinking as much, as much water as I can for the day. Yeah.
Yes. No, and I talk about this in another episode about choosing yourself,
Hmm.
and about how we didn't pre-COVID really talk, at least not in the US, too much about self-care. It
Right.
was it was for those that could afford it, right? And if you couldn't afford it, then it wasn't a conversation that you got to have. Whereas now it's, if you aren't doing it, stop everything you're doing and go do it.
And you know what? That's a complete fallacy, people that can afford it. It's complete
Yeah.
bollocks. It's
Yeah.
bollocks.
Yeah.
Everyone can afford to take care of themselves, because
Yes.
there are so many things that are free to
Mhm.
do, like being silent, closing your eyes, and just concentrating on your breath. Doesn't cost you
Mhm.
anything.
Mhm.
And yet the benefit it gives to you is massive.
Yeah.
So this kind of, talk about, oh, I can't afford it, it's bollocks.
It's, and I mean, like an Epsom salt bath, right? Like, I mean, if you want to get fancy, you can go and get the very fancy, bath
Well, you
bombs.
shouldn't be, actually, you know what? You should be going as basic as possible, because
Mm.
all the fancy stuff usually has a load of crap put into it to make it smell
Mm.
nice and this, that, and the other. My
Yeah.
recommendation is, you just, because Epsom salts are also called magnesium flakes, right? They're the same thing. It's
Mhm.
exactly the same thing,
Mhm.
right? So all you want to do is get just basic magnesium salts, magnesium flakes. None of this, perfumed with this, that, and the other. You need
Mhm.
to keep it simple and
Mhm.
basic. And then if you do want to add some nice smelling stuff to it, then you get the essential oil and drop that into your bath. Do
Mm-hmm.
not get the pre-made smelly stuff, because I can, even without looking at the back of the packet, I can tell you it's going to have some crap in there that's going to
Mm.
be counter to what you're trying to do, which
Yeah.
is to nourish your body.
It, and when I started doing Epsom salt soaks, um, I set intentions before I got in. And, of course, like there's all of these like memes and shorts on social media of like how women set up their baths, and there's like this whole charcuterie board, and there's a
Not
there's a
not just women, I might add. I know.
yes, I know. And
I know a certain man that loves his bath, and I'd say, "What the hell is he doing in there? He's been there like an hour."
yes,
Because I love my bath, but I'm not in there for, longest would be 40 minutes. He
mm-hmm.
could do like hour plus. Oh my gosh.
Doing a refill
Sorry.
mid-time, like midway through. It has to be
Yes,
cold.
that's exactly what he does.
We have
Pulls out the plug to let some out and then, draws some more hot water in. Yeah, that's exactly what he does.
and it's so funny. There was a gentleman in my life for a while, and he had a whole expandable board that would be utilized for his bath time. And I'm like, I'm not even like that. Like,
Well, funny you should say that, because I bought one of those boards to prop on the bath for him as a present.
I love it.
And apologies to the him, because he knows that who he is. I'm sorry that I'm talking
Be
about
fine.
you, but I just couldn't not put this in here.
No, he'll be podcast famous. He's fine. Everything's fine. Well, he loves it. He loves it. But I just, I think about these shorts that come up, right? And there's all of these whatever gender non-specific of like what the setup looks like.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that the part they don't talk about, or at least highlight in this video, in these conversations, videos, whatever it is, the intentions that are being set before you get in.
Yes, and I was going to say, I'm really impressed that you have that as a practice, because um, I don't have that as a practice, but I
Mm.
should have. And that is actually because, like, I talk to the water that I drink and, give intentions to that.
Yes, yes.
And I have a whole ritual, yes, when I'm getting my bath together, and like, I'll swish like a figure eight
Mm.
and, all that kind of
Mm.
stuff. So I guess I do. I just don't talk to it, right? But I'll probably start
Mm.
talking to it. But what you're doing is just like when you talked about being in the ocean and,
Mm.
um, saying a whole prayer of gratitude and affirmations and things, you
Yeah.
are actually communicating with the water, and it will communicate back to you. So when you were in that ocean and you felt so revitalized as a result of doing that,
Mm-hmm.
you had you were just as much responsible for that as the water was,
Mm-hmm.
because you were activating it with your intention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're doing with your bath water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's I started doing this because of Daisha, who again has been highly impactful in my life, in my 20s and 30s now. And she makes these, she Antiope, I'll have to wear her at some point so she could make an appearance. And yes, I did name my chest piece after the Amazon general, Wonder Woman's aunt, in case anybody's curious, or we have DC fans out there, just so y'all know. So anyways, Antiope is she made her for me. And she also made and makes these bath salts, and they come with a little card in them. And some of them are like for your womb, some of them are for your sacral chakra, depending on what it is that you need. Those are what I knew I needed. And it says like, these are the intentions that you need to set while using
Mm.
this.
Yep. Yep.
And because I knew what I wanted to get out of using those salts, even though I've run out, I still do it.
Well, that's important because the
Yeah.
water is going to pick that up still. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter that you don't have the salts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Salt is like
Activator?
a yes. So, but you can still activate the water with your intentions even without the salts.
Yeah.
Or, you know, just like with putting the little bit of pink Himalayan salt in your drinking water, you can do the same thing in your bath water and just bless it with a bit of,
Yeah.
Himalayan pink salt.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's interesting. We talk about like prayers, blessings, astrology, wellness, health, healing, and I think that eventually we do get more into what we mean by healing, and releasing. But I probably have been the most unique child of my siblings, and engaging in different cultures and in different practices, and truly finding and appreciating my superpowers, just to like circle all of this back, right? And I we've kind of talked about this before, but I don't know if we were really planning on talking about it today.
Okay.
But maybe I think this might be my last moment while we're here to even explore this, because we've been talking about tapping into superpowers, right? And I had this amazing woman who I knew very briefly in my life. I was explaining to her, I'm having these very unusual, seemingly psychic abilities or visions. And I'm explaining this conversation to her, and she said, what you're telling me is that you have shamanistic capabilities. And this is an academic, right? Like I was never expecting that to come out of her mouth.
Right.
And I still don't know, honestly, that I completely understand the difference between, and I'm not saying that you're an expert in any of this, I just love to hear
Mm,
what you think about it. But
mm.
of tapping into superpowers and then claiming and receiving that power that has been given to you. And I'm curious for everyone out there, and just like in this conversation, yeah, you can tap into them, but then, that whole phrase of like, use your powers for good, right? When have you had that experience when you've tapped into your superpower and then you're like, or set powers, and you're like, okay, now I'm going to go use them, but because I know them and I feel them and I've embraced them and I understand them well enough for now in the level that we're at, and now I'm going to go and do my due diligence and use my powers for good. Like, when you've started to tap into yours, how did that translate into your actual being?
When I tapped into my superpowers, how did that translate into my actual being?
Yeah, like, did
That's the
you
question.
did you shift? Yes, like, meaning like the phrase, right, of like, just shut up and shift, right? Like, shift into that power versus like, okay, yes, I have superpowers, right? Like, no, you're like, no, I actually have them. I know what they are. I know how to engage with them. I know how to receive messages that they're giving me, but I also know how to give that message as well. Does that, I mean, yeah, that's partially what I'm asking you, but also like embracing them.
Yeah, so that's quite multifaceted. So I'll start with um, the first thing that first of all, I always knew I had powers,
Mm,
unseen power, right? and you and I have talked about this, where, you know, you're very aware that you have a presence, and that, you know, when you're in a room, your presence in the room never goes unnoticed by people,
Yeah.
right? So that is, it's like a charisma, right? So a charisma is a type of power. And then I also knew that I did have abilities in the unseen realm. Majority of my life, I kind of, well, not kind of, I just ignored it, right? Always interested in things like, you know, crystals and astrology and, you
Yeah.
know, things that are, I guess, they're a bit more mainstream acceptable.
Yes. Yes.
When we're talking about shamanism, I think it's probably changing now. But when we're talking about shamanism and all those and magic, you know, so
Yeah.
I like to think of it as discovering the magic in life, right? And the fact that I'm capable of magic,
Ooh.
right? And actually
Yes.
being able to see the magic in life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because, like, the
Mm-hmm.
fact that you and I are talking right now is magic, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the future. I'm in the future. You're
Yes.
talking to me in the future,
Yes.
right? Today here is Wednesday and you're in Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
How is that not magic
Yeah.
already, right?
Yes.
I mean, plants, you know,
Mm-hmm.
water is magic. Anyway, it's a different way of seeing things.
Mm.
And that is, I would say, you know, animism, shamanism, just like appreciating that we have at our disposal within us and without of us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
All of this like power and abilities and magic. And I mean, shamans and people that, you know, practice shamanism have um, learned the language. It's just like learning a language.
Mm-hmm.
They've learned the language, and
Mm-hmm.
anyone can learn the language. It's
Yeah.
not it's not a select group of people. No, every single one of us have
Mm.
these powers and have the ability to learn the language.
Mm.
It's not, you know, I'm really not for this kind of elitism and, you know,
Yes.
I'm a
Yes.
shaman and, you know, I'm extra special. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that shamans do that, but you know what I'm saying. It's
For
like,
sure.
I think, who is it that says, I am not your guru? Is that Tony Robbins? It might be.
Feel
Um,
like it would be.
yeah, so I'm not promoting Tony Robbins, not at all, but that saying is absolutely correct. You know, no one is anyone else's guru. Everyone is their own guru.
Mm. Mm. I feel
I
like,
don't even know if I answered your question.
no, you did in so many ways, because, and then it just like naturally led into our next episode where we'll be deep diving into talking about, you know, your truest form of your authentic self. And I feel like the part that you said is that everyone has superpowers. Everyone can do magic. Everyone has this gift.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and it's just this reminder, you have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
You have to
And
want to
actually,
be okay with it.
well, be okay with it. And actually, it's a lot more, it's in your everyday world. All you have
Mhm.
to do is open your eyes and see it.
Mhm.
That's all.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's part of, you know, learning the language.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
to stop and notice it, because we're so in our phones, in our houses, you know, we're not actually we're like this, you know,
Mhm.
blinkered and
Mhm.
not looking at the absolute magic of the natural world that
Mhm.
we are. We're also natural, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
you know, the real true meaning of savage is natural. But
Mm.
it's been distorted to mean, for some people it has a negative connotation, but
Yeah.
actually being savage is being very natural and in tune with nature.
Mm. Mm.
So I don't mind being savage,
Absolutely not.
and I have a number of friends that have no issue with
Yeah.
being savage. They call themselves savage.
Feel like we're channeling Meg the Stallion right now.
Oh,
Um,
are we? Okay. I have no problem with that.
at all, not at all. No, but and I think too, I know we were getting close to that organic transition to
Mm,
ending and then beginning the next conversation. But when you talked about plants and you
yeah.
talked about the natural and you talked about looking at it,
Yes.
when I moved to Austin, I became the plant lady.
Hmm.
It became a thing, especially after I found this wholesaler, and we won't go there. That's a whole nother
Yeah.
conversation we can work through. But I see my plants growing and I see their new leaves coming out, or even when they're frustrated at whatever I haven't done for them and they're showing me that I am
Yes.
not tending to
Communicating
their
with you. Yes.
needs. it For anyone that has a fiddle leaf fig, I just want to say this as a disclaimer, or you want to get one, don't get one, because they're the ones that will tell you, they will mislead you in your plant journey. Let me just say that. But when I started to get my fiddle leaf fig to actually like thrive, it was because I threatened him. I'm serious. And then also like, fiddle leaf figs, yeah?
No, no.
Oh, geez. Okay. So you might know them um the invader plants, or as oh gosh, they're oh, when I was in Belize, I saw them in their natural state. And
Okay.
fiddle leaf figs, they have obviously massive leaves that look like fiddles. Okay.
Oh, right.
Yes. But I've noticed in the islands, they call them something else
I was going to
because,
say I probably do know them. I probably do know that. I know I would know it to look at it, but I don't know
yep.
it by name.
And
Yeah.
you've probably seen them because they will grow into a tree so that they can withstand how big their leaves get, because their stem is actually like extremely skinny. And so they will grow on to another tree and kill it
Mm, right.
so that they can get to the top,
Right.
and they grow into its root system into
Oh.
the middle of the tree. Yeah, because
Mm,
it's too big. Their
mm,
leaves are too big,
mm,
so they have to keep
mm,
growing and growing and growing.
mm,
And so you'll see all of these like shorts on Instagram now, and they're like, make sure you shake your fiddle leaf figs stem so it feels like it's getting stronger. And I mean, all of these ridiculous things. But
right.
the reality of this plant is it would just prefer that you put it next to something else so it can kill it.
Right. So it
It's
can
an
go and catch a ride. Yeah.
yes, yes, it's
Yeah.
an invasive plant. Like you don't want them. And I'm in the middle of Belize, and there's and we're in the jungle, and there's this massive tree. And God forbid, I might lose my memory at this point, but our guide called them a name.
Yeah.
And I said, I am of course looking at everybody else that's Americans there, and I'm like, is that a fiddle leaf fig?
Yeah.
And I have pictures, and if I can find them specifically, you can't see the leaves as well in the picture. But what you can see is that it's like burrowed into this tree and latched
Right.
on.
Right.
And I feel like that just circles back to like that psychic vampire, like
Mm,
things that just want to latch on and
mm.
take from you.
Parasitic.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes.
mm.
And I know we're transitioning our conversation, but how I've still been trying to figure this out, because like I wear Antiope when I need to protect myself.
Right.
She's surrounded in copper. There's energy flow within copper, right? And then there's just this massive Amazonite stone that lives on my heart chakra and protects me when I go out into places and spaces that I'm like, I don't know. And right. And you mentioned this about your hair, right? Where you're like, mm, mm. And I'm curious, could you explain, like, this will be what we end on. Could you explain what that feeling is, or just share that feeling that you get when that energy that you don't want to receive or shouldn't be receiving is like reaching towards you?
God.
Can you put that into words?
If you imagine that, all I can only like paint a picture. It's almost like you're an anemone, right? Like, the sea anemones with their,
Mm-hmm.
and then as soon as you go to put your finger near the sea anemone, it'll go, right? So it feels like that. It feels like you're kind of open with your energy anemone vibes happening, right? And
Yeah.
then you have someone with that kind of intent coming towards you, and basically it all pulls in, right?
Mm.
It's like a recoiling of
Mm.
energy, and sometimes it can also be a physical, you actually take a step back
Yeah.
and you don't even realize you've done it.
Mm. Mm.
So it's first that, and then it's walls up.
Yes.
Because and also, sorry, this is part of the superpower, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we joke about this, some of my Samoan friends and I joke about this,
Okay.
being able to kill someone with a stare. Right?
I did not know
When
that's where
when
you're going with this.
when you need to, right? This is not the kind of power that you use all the time, but when you need to, it comes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
Yeah.
no,
Yes.
right? I don't even
Yeah.
need to say no because my whole face has told you no.
And if you are so bold to continue, at least in
Oh
this
my
is how I
gosh.
feel, it's on you. It's on you. You woke up
Correct.
and chose violence that
Correct.
day, and you found the right one. Because you don't get to take this.
I mean, the thing is, I'm not a violent person, but there's been many people that have said to me, please don't hit me. Jokingly,
Yeah.
obviously. They're
Yeah.
joking. And I'm like,
Really.
where did you get this from? Don't hit me. Because, like, I have never hit anybody
Yeah.
and I've never threatened to hit anybody. And yet people joke
Mm-mm.
about, oh, don't hit me. It's like, but I'm not going to hit you.
Oh, but that face said otherwise.
Exactly.
The face,
Yeah.
that whole experience. Oh yeah. Uh, I would have, I don't know if you ever had someone tell you like people can see your face. Has anybody ever said that to you? Like if you're in like a meeting space, anything like that, like people can see your face.
And what do they mean by that?
Oh, your reminder face, your protective face, your uh fuck with me and find out face
Right.
is on,
Right.
because what you're experiencing, you're like, mm-mm, mm-mm, not here, not today, Satan,
Yeah.
right? Like that whole energy is happening and it's
Yeah.
not stopping, because everything that you're hearing, seeing, feeling, experiencing in that moment, you're like, this is not,
Hmm.
I'm not here for it and I don't like it. And then like someone is reminding you like, but people can see you. Because people tell that, I ask you that because people say that to me regularly.
Right.
Like people can see your face, Natalie. And I'm like, oh, was it something wrong with it? Like I didn't like what I was hearing. And so therefore
I
this,
mean, I do know that, I wear what I'm thinking on my face. People can tell immediately. So that's what I'm saying, and that's why that is a power of sorts, right? Because like it can be welcoming,
Mm-hmm.
which most of the time that's, but as you said, if people come towards me with the wrong stuff, then the
Mm-hmm.
other face will switch very quickly.
Which but I didn't even think of it as as a part of your superpowers, right? Like I did not
Yeah,
even.
because you need to have that ability, right? If you're able to be a magnet for people, you
Mhm.
also need to be able to repel
Mhm.
where necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a protection.
Uh-huh.
Mm. And
Well, that's how it should be. It should, some people use it as a weapon. I've never been, that's not me. It's not my vibe. But if I need to bring it out to as a form of defense, yes, I absolutely
Mhm.
will.
Mm. And I feel like we've talked about this, like, when you were talking about being in the UK and being ethnically celebrated and like being, looking like the locals. And I feel like here in the US, um, and you said this as well, we all have superpowers. And there's this negative connotation around Black women's faces, that we always walk around with this resting bitch face, this straight face, no expression. And I think if we would change that conversation to instead be women, specifically women of color, are walking around with their protection face on.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting reframe
Mm. Because we're,
of angry black woman. It's
yeah,
actually, I'm protecting myself, black woman.
yeah.
Mm, I'd
And
never
I'm doing
considered
it
that.
with the skills and powers that I was given from many, many generations before,
Mm.
of what we had to learn and condition ourselves with. And
And I
I
guess what I'm saying in part of that conversation is that there needs to be a awareness that
mm,
defense is not required
mm,
to be up the majority of the time, and it can act as a barrier. And I'm saying absolutely bring it
mm,
out when you need it to,
mm,
be a form of defense, but it shouldn't become, sorry, I hate that word. Don't let it become a default,
mm,
because then it becomes a barrier.
mm. But and I would challenge that in a way.
Mm,
Let me devil's advocate for a moment,
go for it. Yeah.
because I said this today to someone who announced to me, and I immediately thought of you, that she's moving to Panama.
Okay.
And I
Right.
was like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. She's like, yeah, we just had to make the right decision for our children,
Mm, mm,
mixed race children.
mm,
And I said, I feel comfortable enough saying this to you, but I get what you're saying, because I need a break from being a Black woman in America.
right.
And we've talked about this before, like, many of my friends who were like going through COVID here that are minority women, we were like, New Zealand is the promised land, we all must leave, and like exodus to New Zealand, and apparently there's a tribe of women there that are going to just accept us, and we're suddenly going to live happily ever after. I know that's a whole nother conversation, right? But like, I am challenged with, if we are traumatized and our trauma response is to constantly be in protection mode,
Yeah.
aren't I mean, we're almost conditioned and preconditioned
Yeah.
to live with that barrier,
Yeah.
because this isn't just our trauma that we're living with. It is
No.
like ancestor, generational trauma And how do you, and I know we talk about this in another episode, but how do you release generational trauma that isn't yours, to remove that barrier, to not think you have to constantly protect yourself, to not have this mentality of every time I step out of the door, someone's going to think I'm an angry Black woman, potentially come and try to touch me for some reason of some sort, right? Because I'm this magnet for whatever it is. And I'm using myself in this space. And then having to then be flowy and airy and engaging and inviting, to not create a barrier to everyone. And that, I mean, I'm just like, I don't know what I would have to do to release that trauma response of this is my safe space. And I'll use this as the example. I'll meet some man randomly and he'll be like, oh, I bet men beat down the door to come talk to you. I bet men talk to you all the time. I bet men stop you in the streets. And I'm like, you know what's really funny? They don't.
Because you've got your safe face on.
Because I've got my, now I was going to say, now granted, if I go to the Dominican, it's a whole nother story, but that's not the point of this story. The point of this story is I have my safe face on.
I like that expression, your safe face. I like that expression. Yeah.
Because, and also, and I feel like, you know, that's the whole term of like empath is just now like the thing that everyone is. And I'm like, we're all empathetic. There's a difference when you can literally feel it. Yeah. And some of it is that I don't want to feel it. I want to just go and do the thing I need to do and go home.
I hear you. Yeah. I hear you 100%. And I'm saying I hear you 100% because, you know, having been in a long, 17-year relationship with a Black man, that I know that is reality, the safe face requirement. And even though it's a lot more subtle in the UK, it's no less deadly, no less deadly. It may be a lot more polite, but man, it's still ugly. It's a lot more polite, but it's still ugly.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that's not, our goal with any of the conversations that we're having of like fixing generational trauma. Because I think,
it is part of the conversation because everyone has, so, I mean, we are living in a time where a lot of the people that are in, positions of influence, it just happens to be the generation that's in positions of influence, as in the age group, come from a traumatized generation, right? So my mum was traumatized because her father was traumatized from World War. You've got a whole, you've got the children of the people that went to war and had PTSD. That PTSD manifested in some way, like with my mum, it manifested as sexual abuse, right? And my grandfather killed himself because he had serious PTSD. So you and my story is not unique. That the actual details are different, but it's not unique that you've got grandparents that have the way they've dealt with their PTSD has been visited on their children, and I'm the child of that child and that child never dealt with the trauma that they suffered at the hands of their parents. And so for me, part of stepping into, the healing space, you have to heal yourself first. And part of healing yourself first is you've got to go all the way back and look at the generational trauma. So it is totally relevant to what we're talking about, because your
Mm.
wellness starts with looking at, what is it that you're carrying from your ancestors?
Mm. And I know we talked about this the other night that was yesterday, for hours, of
Yeah.
just navigating that. And I say this again to everyone that's listening. I implore you to find a person. It doesn't have to be a counselor, therapist, anyone that specializes in holistic healing or anything of that sort. But one of my friends, Troy, he said, you gave me the gift of being my truest self, and you took me as I am, and you let me be me. And I think that's this interaction, right? Because again, reminding everyone, like, we've never met in person. One. Two,
No.
we met like virtually, officially, like 2 months ago, 3 months ago,
Hmm.
max.
Hmm.
And the cosmic synergy that happens when you can find someone to have that space with, and you don't always find it, right? Like, I mean, it's taken me X amount of years and like partial experiences of learning and seeing and finding those things. But now it's like, when you share this idea and you're like, yeah, I think this is a good idea. And then you share it with a human and they're like, what's really crazy is that was the idea that was in my head 3 days ago that I never
Yeah.
told anyone about. So how did you know that was an idea that I would be interested in, right? Or our backstory of our mothers, really, like relationships with our mothers, right? Like that was live and live in color, right? Like on the
Yeah.
podcast, learned
Yeah.
in that moment. And
Hmm.
and it's that thing again, right? Of like, and I listened to this on one of my favorite podcasts, and one of their listeners commented, like, I appreciate your banter even when you don't agree.
Yeah. And it's important to, have the conversation and
Mhm.
not catch feelings during the
Mhm.
conversation, and,
Mhm.
let everyone, because everyone has their truth.
Mhm.
And I don't expect you to agree with my truth, and neither do I need to agree with your truth, but we can agree to respect each
Yeah.
other's truth,
Yes.
right? Because what's
Yes.
true for you may not necessarily be true for me, and vice
Mhm.
versa. And that's cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It doesn't, yes, that's the catch feelings, right? It's like, it doesn't change the dynamic. It doesn't change the conversation. It's just
No.
a moment of learning within that
It's
conversation.
exactly that. Yeah, it's a teachable moment, as they say, you
Mhm,
know.
mhm. I love the soft quotes in that teachable
Yeah.
moment.
Well, it's all these, buzzwords that come out. It's like, you
I
know,
know.
it's almost like bullshit bingo, as I used to call it when I was in corporate meetings, and they come out with all of these buzzwords, and it's like, oh, geez. Yeah.
Yeah, no, especially with your project management background, when
Yeah.
people start saying words and I'm like, that's not what that means. Don't say that. Don't do that. Yeah. No, you know what? Thank you. Thank you for this space. Thank you for your time, your willingness to be vulnerable with me. Um, yeah, creating these
I did warn
conversations.
you. I did warn you. I'm quite happy, no holds barred, talk about anything.
Yeah. Maybe, once we get into the real grit and grime of it, or maybe this is more of our bourbon segment. I don't know, maybe not. We can do the coffee enema walkthrough.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That'll be for the diehard,
Yeah.
true from the grow, tea,
Yeah.
coffee, water
And
listener.
now everyone's like switched off. It's like, what?
They're like, and scene. We'll come back maybe next week, maybe not. I don't
Yeah.
know what in the
Yeah.
world we're talking about. Oh my gosh. And I feel like, again, those who need to hear it, they will hear it, they will be here for
Correct.
it, and they
Correct.
will receive it.
Yeah.
And that's the like fluidity, the fun, the appeal of doing this podcast is like, one, being able to share my story, which I didn't realize the impact again, right? Like I didn't realize my superpower in telling my story, but then also telling the world about all of these fantastic people that I've met. Because you're not mine. I don't get to, I mean, like I will claim you as kept for however long I can, but like you're not mine to keep forever. You're not my friend. You're not my counterpart, right? You're not mine. And there's just such a powerful story to share from you. And thank you for being here with us.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah. So next week, and I will allude a little teaser moment. So one of the moments that Liyanne and I had, and I know this is like a super long episode, y'all, but this is if you're still with us, this is gonna be the big mic drop moment. I had said something to Liyanne, like, I really want to try to do this thing. And it is submitting a South by Southwest 2024 panel pitch. And so I'm going down this rant of what I want to do. And it was crazy. I mean, it was literally like I sent it and said it, and she sent me, you sent me like back to back to back to back pictures or something like that. Or it was like all in one super long email. I can't remember which way it went. And you were like, you're kidding me. Because this, like, look at this thing. So we are submitting a South by Southwest panel pitch for 2024 to have a conversation around embracing your authentic self, transforming from, tell me how you say it, from love, from, help me. How do you say it? Because I'm going to murder it if you don't
Are you
help
talking
me.
about the diversity bit?
Yes, of being a
So
disruptor and it, yeah.
yeah, so I guess this kind of touches on when I was, talking about bullshit bingo, right? So diversity and inclusion.
Mm,
Inclusion always gets left out of the conversation, and people think they're ticking the diversity box when they're absolutely not.
mm,
And
mm,
so the panel is about love and authenticity,
mhm,
and that if you come from a place of love, you
mm,
don't actually, and you approach people with love,
mhm,
then you don't need to worry about ticking any of the diversity and inclusion boxes, because you will automatically tick all of those boxes if you're coming from a place of love.
mm. Yes. Oh my gosh. And so part of being a disruptor is changing the conversation. And in order to change the conversation, I heard this just recently, a similar version of it, you have to build your own table. And so we are bringing people to the table who are disruptors, who are changing the conversation. And we are bringing that with passion, with love, with authenticity, and hopefully with the support of our community and listeners here on this podcast and in general across the world. We will be selected to be one of the panel sessions at South by Southwest Panels 2024. And we'll talk a little bit more about that next week, but I just wanted to put that little teaser moment in there of embracing your truest form of your authentic self, and how we didn't even know that we wanted to do something like this and present this out so that people can take it and teach it and share it and reproduce it and then end up changing the conversation on a global scale. So keep in tune for more notes and pieces about the panel. Part of the application process is to get our community to vote with us, for us, to be accepted. And so check the show notes here and there. We'll have a huge announcement once the application is accepted and we go live for the voting part. But I just wanted to throw that out there, because you never know when someone else's brain is on the same spectrum that you're on and they want to do something crazy with you.
Or even more important, someone's heart is on the same channel. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this extra long session today.
Oh my God. And yeah, oh my God, I'm really impressed if you're still with us.
What? I told you it's going to be interesting. Yeah, yeah. And so thank you all for staying. And we will see you next week with another water series session around embracing your truest authentic self. Thank you all so much for listening. Liyanne, thank you for being here with me. And we'll
My
see you next
pleasure.
week. Yeah. All right. Take
Yep.
care.